This week, your project is going to be over Christopher Columbus. Now, for much of American history, at least since the time of our founding, Christopher Columbus has been considered a hero in American history, someone that we could look up to, someone that we could admire. For the Italian Americans who were often mistreated when they first began to immigrate to the United States in the late 19th century, Christopher Columbus truly became a major hero. And to this day, there are still Columbus parades and things by the Italian American communities in many large cities. However, Columbus has recently come under fire in the last few years, maybe the last couple of decades, for supposed genocide and for just cruelty. And many people in America, the United States, as well as other parts of America, North and South America, have come to view him not so much as a hero, but as a villain. And so today there has been a lot of debate and discussion over whether he is a hero or a villain. And if you've watched any of the news over the last few weeks, you've seen that in some of the riots that have taken place in some of the American cities, statues of Christopher Columbus have been torn down, they've been defaced. A couple of them have even been set on fire. One was thrown into a harbor. So he is not faring as well in modern history as he did previously when I was growing up, for instance. This week, your job is going to be to do some research to find out what you think based upon the evidence. Now, the way I view it as a historian and as a history professor is this: if you can back up your assertions with documented evidence, then you can have different opinions than what I or other people may have. Now, that doesn't mean I will agree with you. I may try to persuade you to come to my side of the issue. But if you can back up what you say with good, reputable evidence, then you will not lose credit, even if it's something that I don't personally agree with or that other people don't agree with. Historians who are honest can disagree over certain topics based upon the evidence that they have. So I'm not worried about whether you come to my opinion or not, but I want to know what your process is, how you think about it, what you think using the historical sources and documents. So your job this week is going to be to determine whether he is a hero or a villain, or you may even decide that maybe he's heroic and villainous all at the same time. You know, people are very complex, so it's possible that he may not just be heroic or just villainous, but he may have aspects of both, and that's okay. So what you're going to do for this week is you're going to watch the video in Google Classroom and you're going to answer the embedded questions. There will be a video over Christopher Columbus, and he's basically being put on trial in this video. It's a short video, but there are some questions that you will need to answer as you go. So you'll watch that video and answer the embedded questions. Then you will need to choose 2 to 4 partners for this project. If you are learning remotely, if you are at home doing this remotely, you can either do this project by yourself, or if you know other people that are involved in my dual credit class, as long as they're in the same period as you're in, even if they're doing it in person or if they're also doing it from home and you know of them, you can partner up with them as well and collaborate that way. That is fine. I'll let you make the choice on that. You will need to develop questions that you will seek to answer. I will give you a Google document that will allow you space to write those questions down, and you will submit this document at some point during this week, so I will see what questions you have. You'll submit it at the end. But you will need to develop questions you will seek to answer. If you're going to do historical research, you need to know what it is you need to research. Okay, you don't just go at it blindly, or at least that's not the ideal situation. You need to have your ideas kind of to guide you. Okay, so I'll give you an example. When I was working on my master's degree is in military history with a concentration in World War II. I did a lot of research on the dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And there are a lot of questions. So, for instance, some of the questions I may have asked is, what do the historical primary sources say? What does Harry Truman's own writing say? What was the situation on the ground? You know, how were things going? What were the leaders from various aspects of the military saying? So I would look at things like that, you know, just kind of give myself a broad idea of what questions I need to consider as I'm preparing to do my research. You want to have an idea of where you're going before you begin. Now, as you go, you may develop more questions because you may find something and that may lead to other questions. Just add that question to your list on your Google document and you will be fine. But just develop questions just to kind of get you started on your research. You'll need to find reputable sources for your research. The first thing you need to do is you need to go to the primary sources, and I will include in Google Classroom some places where you can go to find some primary sources for your research. But as you look at primary sources, remember, as historians, we don't take anything at face value. We want to assess whether there is any bias involved in those sources. So I will expect you to look at those sources critically. Don't just accept them at face value. Look, if it's something that Christopher Columbus wrote, okay, you can use it as a primary source, but you also need to consider what was the motive behind his writing. Was he trying to cover up something? Could he have been trying to cover up something? Could he have been trying to promote a particular view so that he could gain more support from the King and Queen of Spain? You know, things like that. You need to consider what was the reasoning behind the author's production of that document. You can use secondary sources, that is fine, but you need to make sure that you find reputable sources. Now remember, there are going to be a lot of biased people out there. If you find something from Howard Zinn, for instance, he's a famous historian who views Christopher Columbus and views much of American history as very negative. And you just need to keep in mind that he does have bias in his research. But on the other hand, if you look at someone who only views American history as everything positive and great and wonderful, and Christopher Columbus is just this superhero, you also need to keep in mind that person is going to have some biases. So keep in mind the biases that your secondary sources might have as well. You will then create a slideshow of your findings and your answer to your questions. Now you need to have one ultimate question to begin with. Maybe a hypothesis is a better way to say that. And you can include that where you have your questions. When I did my research on the atomic bombs, my original hypothesis said that Harry Truman chose to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki because he wanted to deter the Soviet Union as they were being aggressive and instilling communism in countries that they were conquering at the end of World War II. Now, as I did my research, I discovered that I did not agree with that hypothesis at all. So I changed my mind as I went. But your slideshow should answer your question. Is he a hero? Is he a villain? Or is he something in between? It needs to answer that question as well as the questions that you sought to answer and any you came up with along the way. As you create your slideshow, and you can do this as a group, so one person in your group, if you're doing it at home by yourself, you don't need a group. But one person will need to create a Google slideshow that you can share with one another, and then you will each have your own part of that slideshow that you need to produce. But in your slides, you need to, don't just give me word for word, just give me summaries, okay? But you also need to cite your sources. That is very important. So if you're going to say something that you're going to quote Christopher Columbus, cite the source. If you're going to quote a historian that doesn't like Columbus, cite the source. It's very important that you cite sources. If you do not know how to do that, you can go to, just Google it, how to cite, whatever, and you will find ways to do that. I would prefer that you use either the Chicago method or MLA method of citation, and whichever one you choose, you need to stay with it. Don't switch back and forth between them. Beside all sources, once you are finished with your project, and this needs to be done by the end of the week, we may make an exception depending on how things are going. But at this point, we're going to look at it being done by the end of the week and submitted. Each person in your group will need to make a copy of that Google slideshow and submit it into Google Classroom so that I have something from each person. So don't just submit one slideshow for the whole group, but submit one per person. So that means whoever created it, all the other people in the group will then make a copy of it and share that copy with me in the Google Classroom, okay? If you have any questions, please let me know. I hope this project is a fun project because it should give us an opportunity to debate and discuss and think about issues that are relevant today, issues that are important to a lot of people today. The Native American community, this is an important issue to them. So, these are, even though it happened, that was 1492, that's been 500 years ago plus. So, it's still relevant today. Enjoy it, have fun. Please let me know if you have any questions, and we will submit this at the end of the week and take a look and see what's going on. But this should keep you busy pretty much most of the week. I hope you have a good day, and again, ask me any questions if you have any.